Welcome to Six Path Weeb, where data meets destiny, and legends are decoded. This is part 2 of Naruko and the Legacy of the Three Eyes, a story that doesn't just evolve. It awakens. Power passed through generations. Secrets buried in chakra. And one path that splits into many. Disclaimer, this content is created for entertainment and analytical discussion. I do not own any of the anime visuals used. All rights and acknowledgements belong to their original creators and copyright holders. Initialize sequence. Let's begin. Time skip, 6 years after the Kyuubi incident. Naruko Uzumaki sat quietly in her small room at the Konoha orphanage. It was her usual spot, right under the single window that let in a sliver of sunlight during the day. She hugged her knees close, thinking back to the events of her morning. Her day had started just like any other. She had woken up early, dressed in her worn-out clothes, and waited patiently for the door to unlock. Sometimes she was lucky and received breakfast without trouble. But most mornings were a struggle. Making her way downstairs was difficult, and on more than one occasion, she stumbled, sometimes because she was tired, and other times because someone had tripped her. If that happened, no one helped her up. Instead, some of the staff or children would snicker or whisper mean things. If she arrived late for breakfast, she didn't get much, just small scraps on her plate. Afterward, she was usually sent back to her room until lunchtime. Her routine didn't change much. During play periods, she was brought out to the backyard with the other children, but she was always kept apart, just watching them play while being told to stay to herself. Then, she was taken back to her room again until dinner and eventually bedtime. On alternate days, there were learning sessions for a few hours. Naruko and the other children were taught to read and were encouraged to ask questions, at least, most of them were. Naruko was made to sit in the corner, away from the others, and was often told to stay quiet. When a teacher did ask her a question and she didn't know the answer, she was scolded. It didn't feel fair, and she didn't understand why she was treated differently. People who didn't know her story might ask why someone so young faced such difficulties. Naruko's birthday was October 10th, the same day that the Kyuubi had been sealed away years ago. It was common knowledge among the older generation in the village. Naruko was an orphan. That, in itself, wasn't unusual. Many children in the village had lost family due to the harsh world of shinobi life. But children who belonged to clans were often cared for by their relatives. Naruko, however, had no known family or clan to claim her. Most villagers assumed her parents had been lost during the Kyuubi incident and thought little else of it. Despite the Kyuubi being sealed, people didn't see Naruko as just a child. They judged her based on things she couldn't control. She looked a bit different from the other children. Her bright blue eyes were beautiful but had vertical pupils, more like those of a wild animal. On top of her head, 2 orange fox-like ears peeked out from her unruly golden hair. Her cheeks had 3 distinct whisker-like markings, and her smile revealed slightly pointed teeth. Her fingernails and toenails were a bit longer and sharper than average, and her bare feet made quiet sounds as she walked. But the most noticeable thing about her, something no one could ignore, were the 9 long, fluffy orange-red tails that flowed behind her. Each one was tipped with a creamy white shade, and they moved with her emotions. She could control them with ease. When she was younger, she thought they were amazing, like something out of a fantasy story. She once asked the kind Hokage, whom she fondly called the old man, why she looked different. He told her that she carried a powerful chakra connected to the Kyuubi's legacy, a result of the events that happened on the day she was born. But he never went into too much detail. At the time, Naruko didn't press him further. She was too young to understand. Her earliest memories were mostly blurry, except for brief moments spent with the Hokage. He always seemed to care, but she didn't see him very often. Now, she lived in the orphanage with other children, though it rarely felt like a home. She wasn't allowed to play with the toys others enjoyed. Whenever she tried to join in, the other children would tease her, calling her names like Fox Girl or making up silly rhymes. Sometimes, the caretaker scolded her, saying she was being disruptive and locking her back in her room. If the children played tricks on her or treated her unkindly, the staff ignored it or acted like it was amusing. Naruko actually enjoyed harmless jokes, she admired clever pranks, but she didn't like when it was done in a way that hurt her. Sometimes, they painted her tails or tied them together. Once, they even put sticky paste on them as a prank. It was uncomfortable and upsetting. She had once tried standing up for herself. To her surprise, she was strong enough to hold her ground against some of the larger kids. But when she defended herself, a caretaker would appear, scold her, and lock her away again. Over time, she stopped fighting back and learned to be quiet. She curled up and waited until the day passed. Her room was small and had very little inside, just a broken bed, a dresser, and a closet she avoided. The closet reminded her of the many times she had been locked inside, and now she didn't like small, dark spaces. Because her bed was so uncomfortable and often full of broken or unpleasant surprises, she began sleeping on the floor, wrapping her fluffy tails around herself like a warm blanket. She would stare out the window at the stars until sleep found her, sometimes with silent tears on her cheeks. In her dreams, Naruko imagined a loving family. A gentle, kind mother who smiled, read stories, and brushed her hair. A strong, encouraging father who taught her amazing things and showed her how to be brave. She dreamed of laughter, hugs, and peaceful days. Her clothes were worn and tattered. She wore a black t-shirt full of holes and a pair of shorts with space for her tails. Most of her clothes came from the trash or were given to her after being discarded. If someone looked closely, they would see how thin she was. The food she received was often just scraps or unkindly given leftovers. The staff once made a remark that children like her didn't deserve anything special. Naruko tried not to believe it. One day, a staff member offered her a plate of delicious food. Naruko had been so surprised and happy that she ran to thank him with a tight hug. She didn't notice the strange smell of the food or how the man stiffened. She ate every bite with joy, grateful for the kindness. Later that evening, she felt very sick. Her body ached, and her stomach churned. She was dizzy and couldn't move without discomfort. Eventually, she fainted from exhaustion. When she woke up, she was back in her room, alone. Despite it all, Naruko never stopped dreaming. She still held on to hope that one day, her life would be filled with warmth, friends, and kindness. And deep inside, she believed that someday, things would change, for her and for everyone who had ever felt alone. Every so often, perhaps once a month, visitors would come to the orphanage seeking to adopt a child. Naruko would do her best to look presentable. She carefully straightened her modest clothing, combed through her golden hair and fox-like tails with an old brush she found discarded, and put on the brightest smile she could muster. She hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time someone would choose her. But every time, her hopes went unanswered. The first time this happened, there had been an elderly man in a grand robe and a tall, ornate hat, whom everyone respectfully addressed as Hokage-sama. Whenever potential adoptive parents saw him, Naruko would feel a mysterious intensity in his gaze, as if he were quietly watching over her. But the visitors themselves, upon looking her way, would quickly avert their eyes or whisper unkind comments, not realizing that her sensitive fox ears could hear them clearly. Each time she was overlooked, a little more of her spirit seemed to fade. She began to wonder why no one seemed to want her. Once, after another disappointment, she caught the scent of tears, faint but familiar. Turning her head slightly, she was almost certain the scent came from the old man himself. One day, Naruko sat alone in her small room, gazing through the window. Though the room was bare, the view of a nearby park offered her a small escape. She watched other children laughing and playing with their parents under the sun. Her ears twitched when she heard the Hokage's voice echoing through the building. The tone grew louder, firmer, and soon, footsteps approached. Sarutobi Hiruzen entered the orphanage with a heavy heart and determined eyes. As the Hokage, he ensured that orphan children, especially those whose parents had been shinobi, were cared for with dignity. Funds were never in short supply. So why, he wondered, had he received multiple reports that one specific child, Naruko Uzumaki, was being isolated and mistreated? He had long suspected that people only behaved kindly when under direct observation. To uncover the truth, he had occasionally sent skilled shinobi in disguise to assess the situation quietly. Recently, the lack of concerning reports had actually increased his suspicions. So, he decided to investigate in person. Disguised with a transformation technique, he arrived just in time to see a shinobi, one who had been assigned to protect Naruko, being forcefully expelled from the orphanage, landing unceremoniously on the roof. Sarutobi subdued him immediately and rushed inside. He found Naruko unconscious, clearly unwell and neglected. Without hesitation, he provided emergency aid and transported her to the hospital. There, with gentle care and discretion, she was treated and allowed to rest, with her memories of the ordeal safely dulled. Upon returning to the orphanage, the Hokage conducted a thorough inspection of her room and reviewed the background of the matron. It turned out that the woman had suffered deep personal loss during the Nine Tails incident. Her misplaced grief had turned to resentment. Sarutobi acted quickly, removing her from her position and promoting a new manager, one he trusted, and assigning a loyal shinobi, codenamed Weasel, to watch over Naruko. But even now, progress was slow. Naruko was still excluded from activities, left behind during outings, and treated unfairly. The Hokage wondered, with a heavy heart, if anyone truly saw Naruko as the hero she was meant to be. On this particular day, Sarutobi stepped quietly into her room. Naruko sat curled up on the floor, hugging her knees, her ears drooping, and her tails wrapped protectively around her. Sarutobi sighed inwardly, then approached and knelt beside her. "Hello, Naruko," he asked kindly. "How are you today?" Naruko flinched, her eyes darting up with uncertainty. She seemed to brace herself, as though expecting harsh words. The Hokage noticed this and gave a silent glare to the fidgeting manager in the doorway, making a mental note to schedule a conversation, with a very persuasive shinobi present. Turning his attention back to Naruko, he gently extended his hand. After a long pause, she finally asked, "Who are you?" Smiling warmly, he replied, "I'm Sarutobi Hiruzen. I'm the Hokage, the leader of this village." "You mean the world outside?" she asked softly. "Yes, Naruko. Tell me, when was the last time you went outside?" "I don't remember," she admitted. Sarutobi surveyed her worn appearance and felt his anger deepen, but he kept his tone calm. "How would you like to take a walk with me? It's a beautiful day." Naruko hesitated. But something about the Hokage's sincerity gave her the courage to slowly take his hand. Together, they descended the stairs and walked outside. As they passed the new manager, Sarutobi released a quiet but powerful wave of pressure. The woman fainted on the spot. Outside, the sun shone brightly over the flourishing village of Kanahagakure. Naruko's eyes widened with awe. She'd never seen so much at once, so many people, colors, smells, and sounds. Her ears twitched with delight as she explored the streets. She bombarded the Hokage with questions, which he answered patiently, amused by her wonder. Though the villagers who passed by looked with distrust, none dared to speak out while the Hokage was present. His gaze alone was enough to quiet even the most bitter whispers. Suddenly, an Anbu appeared beside Sarutobi in a blur. Naruko watched in amazement as the masked shinobi bowed and vanished with a swirl of leaves. "Wow," Naruko exclaimed, her excitement uncontainable. "That was amazing. Can I learn to do that too?" Sarutobi chuckled. He was a shinobi. "As Hokage, all ninja in the village report to me." Naruko tilted her head thoughtfully. "That means you're really strong, huh, old man? But you don't look like it." He raised an eyebrow but smiled. One of the most important skills a shinobi must learn is how to hide their strength. Appearances can be very misleading. They continued walking until Naruko suddenly paused, her nose twitching. "What's that smell?" she asked, sniffing the air with curiosity. Then she took off down the street. "It smells amazing." Sarutobi followed with a fond smile as Naruko stopped in front of a small shop with a sign that read, "Ichiraku Ramen." "What does it say, old man?" she asked. "It says Ichiraku Ramen. Have you ever had ramen before, Naruko?" She shook her head sadly. "Not really. I haven't eaten much before." Sarutobi examined her with concern. She was far too thin. "Well, how about we fix that? My treat." Inside the shop, the chef Tucci beamed. "Hokage-sama. What an honor. What can I get you?" Sarutobi waved him off gently. "No need for formalities. I'm here with a friend today, Naruko Uzumaki." Naruko peeked up shyly. Tucci gave her a warm smile. "Well, Naruko, what would you like? First meal's on the house." Naruko lit up but hesitated, she didn't know what to choose. Tucci chuckled. "Try the miso ramen. It's a specialty." While they waited, a cheerful girl stepped out carrying a box of supplies. "Ayame," Tucci called, "meet our guest, Naruko." Ayame looked over, and then squealed with delight. "So cute. Your ears. Your tails." She hugged Naruko tightly and fired off questions about her features. Naruko froze. For the first time, someone found her unique traits beautiful. Tucci laughed and gently pulled his daughter away so Naruko could breathe. When the ramen arrived, Naruko hesitantly tasted the broth, then lit up with joy and devoured the entire bowl. And the next. And the next. 25 bowls later, even Tucci was stunned. "You've officially set a record," the chef said, laughing. "Tell you what, once a month, come in for a day of free ramen. But any more, and we'd go out of business." Naruko beamed, until she remembered, "I don't have money." Sarutobi reassured her. "You will. I've arranged for a monthly allowance for you. From now on, you'll have what you need." Naruko's eyes sparkled with hope. As they prepared to leave, Sarutobi lifted Naruko onto his shoulders. "Hold on tight. With a flash, they vanished, and reappeared on a grassy field. Naruko wobbled, then fell laughing onto the grass, tails fluffed around her. That was amazing, she shouted. Do it again. In time, Sarutobi replied with a chuckle. For now. Let's go in. Go in where, old man? The Hokage smiled. You'll see. A new beginning for Naruko. Welcome to your new home, the elderly Hokage said kindly, gesturing toward the small but cozy apartment complex ahead. He and Naruko walked together through the front entrance, climbed one flight of stairs, and stopped before a door on the second floor. Taking a key from his robe, the Hokage unlocked it and motioned her inside. Naruko entered, wide-eyed and quiet with awe. The apartment was modest, yet incredibly neat. There was a small kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a bright little living area filled with sunlight. This is mine? She asked softly, looking up at him. Yes, Naruko. It's all yours, he replied gently. You don't have to go back to the orphanage anymore. The refrigerator is stocked, you have fresh sheets and towels, and I even arranged for some custom clothes to be made, your size, of course. He pointed toward the closet. Naruko looked around in disbelief. Her fox-like ears twitched slightly, and her nine tails swayed with emotion. Overwhelmed, tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to cry softly. The Hokage crouched down and offered a warm embrace. I wish I could do more, he thought to himself. Minato. Kushina. I hope you're watching over her. The Hokage spent the next hour gently showing Naruko how to use the stove, the bath, and other appliances safely. Afterward, she'd grown so excited jumping on her bed that she wore herself out and fell asleep, her tails curled snugly around her. Before quietly leaving, the Hokage paused. His expression shifted with deep thought. He formed a few hand signs, and in a moment, his appearance changed into that of a young man with bright blonde hair and kind eyes, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. He walked over to the sleeping Naruko and whispered softly in Minato's voice, Be strong, my daughter. Never give up. I'll always love you, and I'll always be watching over you. He stepped out, gently locked the door, and vanished into the evening. The next morning, Naruko woke up feeling refreshed and full of excitement. She untangled herself from her tails, glanced around at her new surroundings again, and smiled brightly. Everything still smelled new and clean. She padded into the bathroom and enjoyed a long, bubbly bath. After drying off with a fluffy towel, she made her way into the kitchen. Thanks to the old man's thoughtful notes with little arrows and pictures, she was able to fix herself a few bowls of cereal. It was tasty, though she silently decided that it still didn't beat her favorite, ramen. After breakfast, she sat down and began to wonder what she should do next. A thought hit her: explore the village. Yesterday's short walk had been so interesting. There was still so much to see. As she headed toward the closet to get dressed, her hand hesitated on the doorknob. A memory flickered in her mind, being locked inside a closet at the orphanage, scared and alone. Her hands trembled slightly. But Naruko took a deep breath and clenched her tiny fists. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. With renewed determination, she pulled the closet door open. Inside were neatly arranged clothes, many designed to accommodate her foxtails. She picked out a bright outfit and skipped the sandals, since she preferred going barefoot anyway. With her keys in hand, she stepped out into the world. The village was bustling, but Naruko noticed something strange. People around her grew quiet. Conversation stopped. She could feel their eyes on her, hear soft murmurs that didn't feel friendly. Still, she kept her bright smile, walking down the street curiously. As she explored, a delightful scent caught her attention, something sweet in the air. Her nose twitched, guiding her to a small vendor cart with a sign, Cotton Candy. A short line of happy children and their parents waited patiently. Naruko joined the end of the line with excitement, bouncing on her toes. But something strange happened. The moment a child noticed her and pointed her out, the mood shifted. One by one, people began pulling their children away, leaving the line empty. Soon, Naruko was the only one standing there. The vendor looked confused. Can I have one, please? Naruko asked politely, holding out her coins. The vendor's face darkened. He frowned at her unusual appearance, then muttered something under his breath. Without another word, he turned around and packed up his cart quickly, walking away without serving her. Naruko blinked, still holding her coins. She stood there for a long moment, unsure what had just happened. Confused and hurt by the reaction, she quietly turned away. She didn't understand why people were treating her so differently. Just yesterday, when she'd walked around with the Hokage, everyone seemed friendly. Why was today so different? Back at home, Naruko sat curled up on her couch. The brightness in her expression had dimmed. It was her first real experience outside alone, and it hadn't gone the way she'd imagined. She sighed, her tails wrapping around her protectively. Days passed. Rain fell softly outside the window, and Naruko mostly stayed indoors. Her mood grew quiet and reflective. Sarutobi came by for a visit, bringing food and checking on her. He noticed a troubling message scrawled across her door and immediately sent an onbu to have it removed. When he discovered that Naruko had somehow injured her leg, he called for a medic. To their amazement, her body healed quickly, faster than most people. Her leg was set with a splint, and the medic told her she'd be back to normal in about 11 days. To help lift her spirits, the Hokage sent an onbu, one with spiky silver hair and a mask shaped like a dog, to bring her some takeout ramen from Ichiraku. It instantly brightened Naruko's day. As she recovered, she learned to use her tails more efficiently, adapting to her environment with impressive creativity. The onbu, whom she affectionately nicknamed Dog, would sometimes stand watch on rooftops across the street. She would wave at him, and he would occasionally give a quiet wave back, or disappear in a blink. Finally, the day came. The medic removed the splint and declared Naruko healed. She practically exploded with joy, darting around her apartment and laughing. "Please take it easy," the medic urged, but Naruko was already leaping around like a rocket. After everyone left, she stood by the window, watching the onbu leap across rooftops. She was captivated. Shinobi can do that? Run on walls, leap over buildings. That's amazing, she thought. That was it. Her decision was made, she wanted to become a ninja. With determination gleaming in her eyes, Naruko stepped out onto the roof. She looked at the building across from hers. It was far, but not too far. She took a deep breath, stepped back, then sprinted forward. With all her might, she jumped. For a moment, she soared through the air, and landed. But her foot slipped on a small puddle, sending her tumbling with a squeak. Dazed but unhurt, she sat up and blinked. That was awesome, she cheered. She tried again, this time with a little more caution. She didn't quite make the distance and slipped against the wall. But her claws dug in, and to her amazement, she found herself hanging there. "I can stick to walls?" she gasped. Excited, she started to climb, one careful motion at a time. It was slow and clumsy, but she was doing it. Naruko didn't realize how rare this was. Most ninja took years to train their bodies to do something like this. But Naruko was different. She was discovering her own path, one leap, one claw, and one rooftop at a time. And as she clambered up to the top again, she knew deep down, her journey was just beginning. Every so often, Naruko would realize that if she didn't anchor her claws just right, they would slip, and she'd lose her grip entirely. Over time, she developed her own system. While her feet maintained her balance, her hands would reach upward to secure new holds, enabling her steady ascent. When she finally reached the top, she let out an enthusiastic cheer before collapsing in a heap, breathing heavily but satisfied. Now, she could imagine herself as graceful and capable as Dog. Naruko spent the rest of the day refining her jumps and improving her climbing techniques. Along the way, she made a few amusing, and sometimes important, discoveries. For instance, even the most composed kunoichi could become rather flustered if someone scaled a building and, entirely by accident, glanced through a window at the wrong moment. Except for the unusual purple-haired one, who simply asked whether Naruko had gotten a good enough look. Stranger still, she smelled faintly of snakes. She also learned that metal walls presented a serious challenge. Though her claws could grip wood or stone, they merely scraped noisily against metal. One attempt left her wincing from the high-pitched screech as her hand slid down the surface. Ears ringing, she resolved to avoid metal structures in the future. Another discovery delighted her. By adjusting the motion of her tails mid-jump, she could subtly shift her direction in mid-air or even twist to land more gracefully. Unbeknownst to Naruko, her rooftop antics didn't go unnoticed. Curious onlookers below heard her joyful outbursts echoing from above. Most of them, not being shinobi, simply looked around in confusion before continuing with their day. However, ninja, both on and off duty, did take notice. Those currently working chose to ignore her, though not without exchanging some perplexed glances. One onbu, known by the codename Turtle, took a moment to glance around, ensuring no one was watching him break character. Then he muttered something about Naruko's spirited energy of youth before quickly returning to his disciplined demeanor. Eventually, Naruko took a well-earned break, her legs dangling over the edge of a building as she caught her breath. Gazing at the sky, she felt a sudden, odd urge to say troublesome, though she wasn't sure why. Her stomach rumbled audibly, prompting her to chuckle in slight embarrassment. All the running and climbing had definitely stirred up an appetite. Determined to satisfy her hunger, she hopped down from the rooftop and let her enhanced senses guide her. Her nose led her to a large Korean barbecue restaurant, and she eagerly pressed her face to the glass, savoring the aroma. But then she paused. Inside, she saw families and friends laughing, talking, and sharing delicious meals. One particularly lively table included a group of cheerful, well-fed individuals enthusiastically enjoying their food. Naruko watched in awe, and then in quiet longing, as one of them joked around with a pineapple-haired boy, only to get a playful tap from a strict-looking woman. Even she laughed afterward, as did the others, creating a warm and joyful scene. Naruko couldn't look away. For a fleeting moment, she wished she could be part of that family, laughing, playing, being surrounded by people who cared. So caught up was she in the sight that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her. Just as she turned around, a frying pan came sailing toward her and knocked her to the ground. A chef, having just stepped outside, glared at her. "We don't serve your kind here," he snapped angrily. "Go somewhere else." Naruko scrambled up, startled and unsure how to respond. A nearby kitchen utensil clattered to the ground, flung in frustration, but fortunately, it missed her completely. She didn't wait to find out if anything else would be thrown. She turned and ran as quickly as she could, darting through the bustling streets of Konoha, trying her best to avoid the confused stares and whispers around her. She made it to her apartment, still shaken. Without even thinking, she raced up the wall with the help of her clawed toes, burst through her door, and dove into her room. Curling into a ball on her bed, she wrapped her fluffy tails around herself and buried her face in the pillow. All of her energy faded into quiet, muffled tears, tears of frustration, loneliness, and longing. The days that followed were similar in tone. Naruko tried again and again to explore the village, hoping for even a glimmer of kindness. But most of the time, she was met with cold stares, silence, or inflated prices from vendors. Only a handful of people were willing to sell her anything, and besides Ichiraku's ramen, no place felt truly welcoming. The only time she truly felt free was when she was running across rooftops, leaping between buildings, or perfecting the use of her tails to enhance her agility. Though she often woke up sore, the physical challenge gave her a sense of joy and purpose. The third Hokage visited now and then to check in on her. Occasionally, Dog or Turtle would deliver some groceries, offering her small moments of support. But no matter what, nothing ever seemed to compare to a warm bowl of ramen and the peaceful feeling she found when she ran, leapt, and climbed under the open sky. Naruko's festival adventure. Naruko paced anxiously in her small apartment, her hands tucked into her pockets, while her fox-like tail swayed behind her in restless anticipation. The third Hokage had told her that today was her birthday, a special occasion worthy of joy and celebration. However, he had also advised her, gently but firmly, to remain inside for the entire day. When she asked why, the Hokage smiled warmly and promised to take her out for an unlimited ramen feast the following day. Excited by the promise, Naruko had quickly agreed, her ears and tails pricking up as she made her vow not to leave her home. What Naruko didn't know was that today was the Kyubi festival, a day of remembrance and celebration marking the defeat of the nine-tailed fox and the bravery of the heroes who protected the village, especially the beloved fourth Hokage. The entire village had the day off, with even most guards working on rotating shifts so they could join the festivities. The Hokage, as always, was delivering a heartfelt speech to the people and would be spending the rest of the day with his family. Naruko, however, was unaware of all this. She had never experienced a proper birthday. From what she had overheard growing up, birthdays were supposed to be joyful, a time to gather with friends and family, share sweet treats, and feel loved. For her, birthdays had never been cheerful. In the past, she had faced isolation and neglect, spending the day locked away or ignored. But even then, she would watch from her window, eyes wide with wonder as fireworks lit up the sky and music filled the air. The tantalizing smells of festival food would drift up to her window, and she'd close her eyes, imagining what it would be like to join the celebration. Now, as evening descended and the excitement outside continued to grow, Naruko felt the pull to be part of it all. She wasn't confined this time. She could hear the laughter, the music, and the fireworks more clearly than ever. Perhaps, she thought, if she just stayed close and didn't draw attention to herself, she could enjoy the festivities too. Maybe. She could even make a friend. Resolved, Naruko stepped onto her balcony, climbed over the railing, and leapt with graceful agility to the neighboring building. She quickly scaled down the wall and landed softly on the ground below. Her violet blue eyes sparkled with awe as she stepped into the street. Everything was vibrant and mesmerizing. Orange decorations adorned every post and rooftop. Torches lined the pathways, casting warm light across the smiling faces of villagers as they danced, played music, and enjoyed the festival. Naruko noticed paintings and banners, depicting brave warriors facing a large fox spirit. She marveled at the artwork, enchanted by the energy of it all. To her surprise, some kind vendors even offered her treats, delicious dango, fluffy rice cakes, and sweet bean buns. Naruko's spirit soared. She couldn't believe her luck. As she walked further into the crowd, she spotted a group of children around her age, laughing and playing. Eager to join, she ran toward them and waved excitedly. "Hi. I'm Naruko Uzumaki. What's your name?" She beamed. The children glanced at her with curiosity. Because of her orange attire, fox ears, and tails, they simply assumed she was another child dressed up for the festival. One boy shrugged and replied, "I'm Kuran." Naruko looked around and noticed that nearly all the children were wearing costumes, some dressed as the fourth Hokage, others as giant toads or legendary shinobi. A few were even dressed as the nine-tailed fox, playfully staging mock battles with others in Hokage robes. "What's with the costumes?" Naruko asked, eyes sparkling. "We're just dressing up for the festival," Kuran replied. "It's part of the celebration." Naruko's gaze landed on a replica of the fourth Hokage's famous flame-trimmed cloak, left abandoned on a bench. She looked around carefully, but no one seemed to be returning for it. Heart pounding with excitement, she picked it up. Though just a festival costume, to Naruko it felt like she was donning something legendary. She slipped it on. It was a perfect fit, except for her tails poking out from beneath the cloak. With a wide grin, Naruko began mimicking the heroic moves she had seen ninjas perform, dramatic stances, energetic spins, and a few playful flips. She was having the time of her life, and best of all, no one was scolding her or sending her away. Unbeknownst to her, Naruko had joined a group headed toward the preliminary rounds of a village costume contest. The event was meant to reward the most accurate and imaginative portrayals of iconic figures from the Kyuubi battle. When the judges motioned for Naruko to step forward, she did so eagerly, completely unaware of what was happening. 3 judges examined her costume. One was a veteran shinobi, another a thoughtful civilian, and the third a man who had endured loss during the Kyuubi attack. They conferred quietly. "Quite a unique interpretation," said one. "Yes, very creative," agreed another. "It's as if she's representing both courage and mystery, clever symbolism. And that cloak? I've seen many today, but this one's worn with such spirit." The judges smiled and turned to her. "Congratulations, young lady. You've won the preliminaries."
I did?
"Yes." Naruko cheered, bouncing into a joyful little dance. "We just need your name for the contest record." With pride shining in her eyes, Naruko declared, "Naruko Uzumaki." Meanwhile, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was deep in thought. The festival was a time for joy and reflection, yet part of him couldn't fully relax. Though the village celebrated the heroic acts of the past, the one person who truly deserved to be honored, Naruko, was not allowed to take part. It was a harsh truth he had to live with. His official duties continued. After delivering his speech and leading a respectful moment of silence, he mingled with judges and citizens. Yet a lingering sense of unease gnawed at him. His instincts, honed by years as a shinobi, told him something wasn't quite right. During his conversations, Sarutobi noticed orange and yellow strands of hair stuck to a judge's uniform, unusual considering the judge himself had dark hair. He brushed the thought aside, attributing it to decorations, but the feeling persisted. At that moment, an Anbu operative landed beside him, clearly agitated. "Hokage-sama," the masked ninja said nervously. Sarutobi turned, concern sharpening in his gaze. "What is it?" The Anbu shifted uncomfortably. "I was stationed outside Naruko's apartment, sir, but I stepped away momentarily. I saw my parents in the crowd, and I thought it would be all right to greet them quickly." He swallowed hard. "When I returned, Naruko was gone." Sarutobi's expression remained calm, but his voice carried undeniable gravity. "Gone, you say?" The old Hokage's eyes narrowed, but instead of anger, his tone held quiet concern. "Then we must find her, not to scold, but to ensure her safety." Sarutobi turned to the crowd once more, now wondering where Naruko could be, unaware that, in that very moment, the girl was not only safe, but standing joyfully among others, finally feeling for the first time that she truly belonged. Ignoring the strong scent lingering in the air, Sarutobi added through clenched teeth, barely concealing his frustration, "Anbu codename Rat, you are to immediately return to your assigned post and check if there's any chance that Naruko has returned. If you encounter any fellow team members, inform them to conduct a thorough search of the village. No area is to be overlooked. Also, ask them to pay close attention to any mention of Naruko's name or terms like Fox Girl or other inappropriate nicknames that may be circulating." After releasing the Anbu, Sarutobi turned to assist in the search himself. But just as he moved, he stopped mid-step. "And Rat, you better hope Naruko is safe. Because if I find out she's been mistreated or harmed in any way." A dreadful realization hit him, and he dashed off to the last place he had seen Hiroki. He located the man at a nearby tea house, socializing with a few other jounin. As Sarutobi approached, he overheard phrases like, "The nerve of that child. Showing up and acting like she belonged. You should have heard her cry." This was followed by mocking laughter. The laughter abruptly stopped when the group saw who had just arrived. Unaware of their sudden silence, Hiroki continued, "Come on, guys. I did it. I put that troublemaker in her place. After all this time, I did what the Sandaime never dared to." Before he could utter another word, Sarutobi gripped his collar and pulled him around to face him. Hiroki immediately realized his mistake. "What did you do?" Sarutobi demanded, his voice low but filled with restrained anger. "Hokage-sama. I can't breathe," Hiroki gasped. Sarutobi's stern expression deepened as he released him, allowing him to fall to the floor. Turning to the remaining shinobi, Sarutobi addressed them with clear authority. "You all have 5 seconds to explain exactly what happened. And I mean everything. Do not try to hide the truth or sugarcoat it." The shaken shinobi immediately recounted the situation in full. Flashback. Participant Naruko Uzumaki. A voice called out. As soon as those words were spoken, silence swept through the room. The 3 judges stared in disbelief, then narrowed their eyes. Naruko, standing proudly and unaware, smiled in her moment of triumph. She didn't sense the sudden change in mood. Parents in the audience quickly ushered their children away, though many stayed back, their curiosity overriding their concern. Finally noticing the odd quiet, Naruko blinked and asked, Is everything okay? I won, right? That means I get a prize?" Her excitement, however, was met not with cheers but with disapproval. Murmurs and cold stares surrounded her. Without warning, an object was thrown, striking Naruko on the side of the head. She stumbled, reaching up in confusion. A chorus of unfriendly voices rose around her. How dare she stand there so proudly? She has no place here. Naruko backed away, confused and hurt.
I didn't do anything wrong.
I just wanted to be accepted." The crowd's anger escalated. One of the judges tore off her cloak, tearing it apart. "You don't deserve to wear this symbol. You're not worthy." What followed was a barrage of harsh words, jeers, and disrespectful gestures. Naruko curled into herself, overwhelmed by the sudden hostility. "Please. Whatever I did. I'm sorry. Please stop," she cried, her voice trembling. Instead of calming the crowd, her words only drew more shouting. "She's pretending to care. She ruined our lives." They continued to taunt her, recounting personal griefs and blaming her unjustly. Though no one laid a hand on her in this retelling, the emotional toll was evident. Naruko's spirit, bright just moments ago, dimmed with every word hurled at her. End flashback. Sarutobi listened with a growing heaviness in his chest. Though the details were fragmented, the cruelty described was deeply unsettling. He addressed the group once more, his voice filled with restrained emotion. "I will deal with all of you later. If any of you attempt to leave the village without facing accountability, you will be treated as rogue shinobi. Understood?" Without waiting for a response, he vanished in a blur of movement toward the location they described. When he arrived, he was alarmed to find Naruko no longer there. He carefully examined the area. "There's no trail," he murmured. If she had walked away on her own, there would be signs. At that moment, the Anbu known as Rat arrived, breathing heavily. Sarutobi turned sharply. "Speak. And this had better be important." "Sir," Rat stammered. "On my way back, I encountered Anbu codename Weasel. He was carrying subject Naruko Uzumaki and told me to inform you, He's taking her to Konoha's General Hospital. Sarutobi disappeared instantly, vanishing in a swift transportation jutsu. Rat exhaled in relief and slumped to the ground. Elsewhere. Itachi Uchiha, known by his codename Weasel, was a seasoned shinobi, known for his skill and calm under pressure. Despite his youthful age, he had already seen more than most ever would. Earlier that day, he had been reluctantly attending the village's Kyubi festival with his family. After excusing himself, he reunited briefly with his friend Shisui and wandered off. Suddenly, distant shouting caught his attention. As he approached, what he witnessed stopped him cold. Sharingan activated in instinctual urgency, he recognized a young girl, about his brother's age, wounded and unconscious. Despite her injuries, when he pressed 2 fingers to her neck, he felt a faint pulse. "She's alive," he whispered. He considered the risks. "If I leave her here to get help, someone might find her and finish what they started. I have no choice." Carefully, using his medical training, he stabilized her enough for safe transport. Cradling her gently, he took to the rooftops, heading straight to the village hospital. There was no hesitation in his heart. He had made his choice, and it was the right one. He removed a portion of his shirt, tearing it into makeshift bandages. Holding a kunai, always within reach, he focused a small amount of chakra into the blade, then carefully trimmed the exposed edge of the embedded katana. His intent was solely to prevent it from interfering during transport. Removing it completely might have caused further harm. The extended piece still lodged in Naruko's torso was effectively keeping her stable for the moment. Reflecting on his years of precision training with kunai, he moved quickly yet cautiously. Supporting Naruko's body with practiced ease, he gently extracted the kunai that had pinned her tails and hands, and swiftly wrapped the wounds with the cloth strips. Cradling her securely in his arms, he darted across rooftops in the direction of the hospital. Midway, one of his fellow Anbu agents, Rat, appeared beside him. For reasons he couldn't quite identify, Itachi sensed something unsettling when Rat caught sight of who he was carrying. The feeling only grew stronger in proximity. Pushing aside the unease, Itachi gave a firm command. "Locate Hokage-sama. Inform him that Naruko Uzumaki has sustained severe injuries and I'm en route to Konoha General." "Yes," Rat responded tensely before veering off into another direction. As Itachi continued his path, a faint stirring in his arms caused him to look down. To his astonishment, Naruko's eye, bruised but barely open, met his gaze. The encounter briefly disrupted his footing during the next rooftop landing. What was that? His Sharingan had picked up something in that brief glance, something strange, but he couldn't place it. Her eye slowly closed again, and he thought he heard a whisper, soft and fragile. "They said I won." Then silence. Upon reaching the hospital, he placed Naruko gently on the nearest available gurney and called out urgently for assistance. Those staff began to approach, their expressions faltered once they recognized the girl. Some began to turn away. Frustrated, Itachi's Sharingan activated instinctively. His fury barely contained, he seized the nearest doctor by the collar, ready to demand immediate care. Just then, the Hokage entered. "What's going on here?" Sarutobi's voice cut through the room. Itachi straightened but kept his composure. "Hokage-sama, Naruko is seriously injured. I brought her here, but the staff is unwilling to assist." Sarutobi's expression darkened. He stepped forward, placing his hand firmly on the same doctor's shoulder. "If this child's condition worsens because of neglect," he said sharply, "there will be consequences. Do I make myself clear?" The doctor, now visibly shaken, nodded rapidly. "Understood, Hokage-sama," he said, and immediately rallied the rest of the medical staff to wheel Naruko into the emergency room. Itachi and the third Hokage began to follow, but a young woman, Dr. Mokato Nanahara, intervened, stopping them at the doors. "We need to maintain a sterile environment," she explained politely. "But please rest assured, Hokage-sama. Not all of us believe in the rumors. I'll personally see to her treatment." Sarutobi gave her a grateful nod. Once she disappeared through the ER doors, he turned to Itachi. The two quickly exchanged details. "Thank you for rescuing her," Sarutobi said quietly. "What happens next is in the hands of the medical team." "Hokage-sama. There is something else I noticed on the way here," Itachi said thoughtfully. He described the strange phenomenon he'd observed through his Sharingan when Naruko briefly opened her eye. Sarutobi's expression grew contemplative. "This may be significant. I'll record it as a confidential matter for further analysis." He sighed and added, "I also appreciate your discretion, Itachi. I know there may be pushback from certain members of your clan. Be prepared for a council discussion later this week regarding your other activities. I understand, Hokage-sama. I kept my identity concealed, so no rumors should link this to the Uchiha, Itachi assured him before departing. Sarutobi turned back toward the emergency room. For someone entrusted with protecting the entire village, moments like this made him feel strangely powerless. 5 hours later. Dr. Mokato stepped out, looking weary but composed. She bowed respectfully. Hokage-sama, Naruko is stable. She sustained multiple injuries, fractures, severe bruising, and several deep lacerations. There was significant blood loss, but, thanks to her unique physiology, her recovery has already begun. It's still early, but there's no immediate risk of her condition worsening. At least not physically. She glanced down, her voice softer. Emotionally. She's endured a great deal. I can't believe the people of this village allowed this to happen. She's just a child. Sarutobi's gaze softened. Thank you, doctor. Your care means more than you know. A nurse appeared just then. Doctor, she's awake. Without hesitation, Sarutobi followed Dr. Mokato into the recovery room. Upon entering, the sight of Naruko gave him pause. Both arms and legs were wrapped in sturdy casts. Her upper body was heavily bandaged, and a large dressing covered part of her face. Her tails were carefully wrapped and supported. Multiple four lines connected to her, providing fluids and stabilizers. But it was her eyes that struck him most deeply. They looked distant, dull, like the light in her had been dimmed. Naruko, he said gently, you had us worried. How are you feeling? There was no reply. He pulled a chair beside her and leaned in with a kind expression. Please, if you can speak. Tell me what happened. A faint voice replied, trembling with confusion and sorrow, they said I won. But what did I win? I thought they liked me. Tears welled up in her eyes and quietly slipped down her cheeks. Sarutobi reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, gently, respectfully. I'm sorry. I broke my promise not to go outside, she whispered. I won't disobey again. When she had calmed slightly, Sarutobi offered a gentle introduction. Naruko, this is Dr. Mokato. She helped make sure you recovered. Naruko shifted her eyes toward the doctor, then lowered them again. Thank you, Dr. San. I don't think I deserve it. But, thank you anyway. Dr. Mokato stepped forward, her voice warm and steady. Every life matters, Naruko. You don't need to earn that. What you've already done for this village speaks volumes. I'm honored to have treated you. She gave a respectful bow before exiting the room, leaving a stunned and silent Naruko behind. Sarutobi then asked softly, Naruko, I won't force you to relive it if you're not ready, but if you can. Please tell me what happened. Naruko nodded faintly and began to recount her experience. She described how she had wanted to join the celebration, just to feel included, to feel normal. She'd won a small prize, she thought, and believed it meant something good. But then, everything changed. She described the attack as best as she could remember, how everything turned dark, and how the last thing she saw was a pair of red eyes before everything went blank. Sarutobi listened quietly, taking careful notes. When she finally drifted back to sleep, he nodded to the Anbu assigned to the room, and then quietly exited. Outside, he paused. There was a long road ahead. But at least, she wasn't walking it alone. Naruko's emotional state hadn't improved much over the course of the week. The Hokage, Lord Sarutobi, visited nearly every day to check on her, but Naruko's responses remained the same, distant, quiet, and sorrowful. Occasionally, if she showed any emotion at all, it was only through silent tears. As per Sarutobi's careful orders, an Anbu guard remained nearby during these visits to ensure everything was handled with care and respect. Still, Naruko appeared disconnected from the world around her. Not even the promise of her favorite food, ramen, could lift her spirits. It became increasingly clear that Naruko was experiencing signs of emotional trauma. This kind of response, although concerning, wasn't unheard of in a village where even young shinobi sometimes faced overwhelming stress. Typically, trained professionals were available for emotional counseling, some even belonging to clans with special abilities to understand and support mental well-being. However, effectiveness varied, and cultural traditions often led clans to seek help from within rather than outside sources. Knowing that Naruko needed support, Sarutobi immediately began seeking a counselor for her. But as soon as he mentioned who required the help, most professionals politely claimed to be unavailable. Only a small few offered their assistance, but their eagerness raised some concerns. Sarutobi worried about placing Naruko with someone she didn't know or trust, or worse, someone with a hidden agenda. In a moment of grim reflection, he even considered whether it would be safer to shield her from her painful memories, but the thought unsettled him deeply. Doing so would not only be ethically questionable but also risk damaging Naruko's growing sense of self. He consulted Inoiki Yamanaka, a trusted expert in the mind arts. Inoiki explained how memories are interconnected, forming the structure of a person's thoughts and personality. Altering early memories, especially those tied to formative experiences, could cause more harm than healing. It might leave Naruko confused or emotionally lost, possibly even vulnerable to manipulation in the future. Sarutobi sighed. It pained him to admit, but Naruko had already come to understand, far too young, that many people treated her unfairly. She now grasped the full weight of that realization, and it hurt deeply. During one particularly emotional moment, Naruko quietly asked him, "Why does everyone dislike me so much?" The third Hokage, feeling every bit his age, gave a soft answer, "Sometimes, people hold on to the past too tightly." She didn't respond again, and Sarutobi suspected she hadn't fully heard him. Her voice, perhaps, had simply been her heart speaking aloud. To make matters more concerning, her remarkable healing abilities seemed affected by her mood. Though she had started to recover physically, the process was slower than expected. If she stayed in such a withdrawn state, her resilience might fade further. Another week passed, and Sarutobi, overwhelmed with responsibilities, had little time for personal visits. Still, he kept searching for some spark, some idea that might help Naruko rediscover her strength. She needs something to believe in, he muttered to himself. A goal. A reason to move forward. But what? Fate, it seemed, offered a sign. While walking on one of his rare free days, an Anbu approached with another letter, likely another formal request or bureaucratic concern. Sarutobi didn't pay it much attention. But the moment brought back a memory, the day Naruko moved into her first apartment. Something clicked. That's it. Without delay, he made his way to the hospital. When he entered the room, Naruko slowly turned her head, her gaze still clouded. Sarutobi took a seat beside her bed. "Hello, Naruko. How are you feeling today?" There was no reply, only that quiet, distant stare. He spoke gently. "You know, something funny happened today. I remembered something important. I lead this village, and it's my duty to guide those who live here, especially young ones like you. That means I should offer advice, support. But also listen. Listen to what you want." Sarutobi leaned in a little, looking into her eyes. "Naruko, I have a question. What do you want to do with your life? I know things have been difficult. But while you're here resting, maybe you've thought about it." Naruko remained silent at first, then seemed to consider the question carefully. "Good." Sarutobi thought. "This is a start. I remember, not too long ago, you asked me about being a shinobi," he continued. "Have you thought about that again?" Naruko gave a small, thoughtful nod. "And what made you interested in becoming one?" Sarutobi asked gently. Naruko looked up, her voice quiet. "Because I see them doing amazing things. And," she hesitated, "everyone likes them. They smile at them. They respect them. Especially you, old man." Sarutobi nodded, deeply moved. "Well, Naruko, some of my Anbu have noticed you. They've seen you jumping across rooftops with incredible agility." Naruko's eyes widened in surprise. Sarutobi smiled. "Shinobi notice things, after all. You have great instincts, sharp senses, balance, speed. All qualities that would make you a strong ninja one day." A small glimmer of hope lit up in her expression. "And even if you didn't become a shinobi," he added kindly, "there are many honorable paths, each valuable to the village." "No." Naruko suddenly shouted, determination flashing in her eyes. "I want to be a shinobi." Sarutobi chuckled quietly to himself. There she is. That spark is still there. "A shinobi, huh?" he said aloud. "You use the present tense, Naruko, not wanted, but want. That means you're still holding on to that dream, aren't you?" "Always. I'm going to be a shinobi, old man." Sarutobi nodded. "But I won't lie to you, it's a challenging road. Shinobi face difficult decisions, moments that test their strength and courage. Knowing that, do you still want to follow that path?" Naruko paused, thinking carefully, then said something that surprised even him. "How is that any different from my life now?" Sarutobi's smile faded into a knowing look. He understood exactly what she meant. Naruko straightened up. Maybe if I become a shinobi, I can show them that I'm more than what they think. I'll prove I deserve their respect. She clenched her fists with a renewed fire in her voice. And I'll go even further. The Hokage is the strongest ninja, right? Then I'll become Hokage. Then they'll have to recognize me. Sarutobi laughed warmly. That's the spirit, Naruko Uzumaki. I admire your courage. He stood, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Rest for now. When you've recovered, I'll personally make arrangements for you to enter the academy next term. Until then, I'll share some tips to help prepare you. He spoke with quiet encouragement. Learn to observe. Understand your surroundings and yourself. Discover what you're capable of and work to grow. And remember, sometimes, understanding how others think is just as important as strength. Naruko nodded excitedly. You got it, old man. I'm going to do my best. Dadabayo. Naruko's shift in mindset brought noticeable improvement to her recovery, as she began to heal faster after finding new purpose. Once she was fully recovered, she sincerely thanked Dr. Motoko and was officially discharged from the hospital. Naruko took Lord Third's words deeply to heart. If she wanted others to respect and accept her, she would need to earn their trust through her actions. Her first approach was simple: help others with their daily routines. Unfortunately, her efforts weren't well received. Wherever she went, she was met with scolding, items thrown her way, and even being physically pushed away. The hospital eventually stopped admitting her unless Dr. Motoko, Lord Third, or a member of the Anbu personally escorted her. If she came alone, the staff would often send her away, insisting they had more important matters to tend to. Despite everything, Naruko held on to her determination. After such incidents, she would retreat to a quiet, hidden space to rest and recover. Her healing abilities were quite fast, but for more serious injuries, she'd stay awake long into the night, quietly curled up in alleyways or discarded corners, remaining alert in case anyone approached. Even so, it wasn't the physical pain that hurt the most, it was the emotional weight of rejection. Before, people would simply ignore her or glare in silence. Now that she was making an effort to connect, the negativity seemed to grow more overt. One day, an elderly woman kindly asked Naruko to help her cross the road. Eager to be of service, Naruko offered her hand and walked gently beside her, only for the woman to falsely accuse her of wrongdoing. A crowd gathered swiftly, misunderstanding the situation, and treated Naruko harshly. What saddened her more was how others began to mimic such behavior, making Naruko nervous around anyone besides the Hokage or the Anbu she recognized. Naruko's meals came mostly thanks to the occasional Anbu delivery. Without their help, she would have struggled with serious hunger. She adored ramen and wished she could eat it daily, but her small weekly allowance wasn't enough, and most stores refused to sell her anything. Still, her hope endured. One sunny afternoon, Naruko ventured into one of Konoha's parks, hoping to make new friends. She smiled and approached children on the playground, only to be pulled away by adults who insisted she stay away, accusing her of having a negative influence. They either shooed her away or coldly ignored her sincere apologies. Many nights, Naruko found herself quietly crying, wondering why nothing ever seemed to work. But amid the many setbacks, there were small, shining moments of hope that kept her moving forward. One such moment happened during a casual rooftop sprint through the village. Naruko came to a sudden stop, her eyes caught by something vibrant in a nearby shop window, a bright orange jumpsuit. It practically gleamed under the sun. Despite her usual hesitation to enter shops, she leapt down and stared at the outfit with wonder. It was perfect for her training at the Ninja Academy. Although she feared the usual overpricing she faced, she decided to go for it. The shop owner, a man in his mid-years, noticed her enter nervously. He recognized Naruko immediately but chose not to say anything. He wasn't especially fond of her, but a customer was still a customer. Timidly, Naruko walked up to the counter and asked, "Excuse me, how much is the orange outfit in the window?" The shopkeeper blinked in surprise. That particular item had been a teaching prop, meant to illustrate how not to dress as a stealthy ninja. The instructor who had ordered it changed his mind after his class found the outfit hilarious, and the shopkeeper had been stuck with boxes of them ever since. Naruko, mistaking the silence for rejection, turned to leave, until the shopkeeper called out. "Wait. Are you really interested in that suit?" Naruko turned back, surprised. "Well, yeah. I think it's amazing." After a moment's thought, the shopkeeper made a decision. He pulled down the suit from the window and brought out a whole box of matching ones. "Here, you can have them all. Just pay for the one in the window, I've been trying to get rid of these for ages." Naruko could hardly believe her ears. She carefully paid from her frog-shaped coin purse, Gama-chan, a gift from Lord Third, and gently picked up the box. She gave the shopkeeper a bright, "Thank you, sir," and skipped happily out the door. The next few months brought a wave of energy. Naruko turned Konoha into her own personal playground. She ran across rooftops, vaulted over market stalls, and climbed poles just for fun. Some villagers tried to stop her, but she was usually too fast. Only skilled shinobi ever managed to catch her, and most let her go with just a friendly warning. She scaled tall buildings and leapt through the air with the wind rushing past her face. It was the most freeing feeling in the world. One day, Naruko challenged herself to climb the Hokage Tower using just her natural agility. She succeeded, much to the confusion of the guards, who couldn't detect any chakra usage. Lord Third, reading a light-hearted novel in his office, was startled by a knock at his window. He turned, kunai ready, only to find Naruko waving happily from outside. Laughing, he let her in and even rewarded her with a ramen coupon in exchange for keeping quiet about his reading material. During one of her explorations, Naruko found a quiet, abandoned building. Where others saw ruins, she saw potential, a perfect spot for training and peaceful reflection. She made a mental note to return often. Not long after, Naruko discovered a beautiful estate with intricate gardens and peaceful walkways. She didn't know it belonged to the Hyuga clan. Curious and unaware of the social implications, she climbed over the gate, quietly and gently landing inside. The estate was peaceful. She hid in a bush when two guards walked by, both with unusual white eyes. After they passed, she continued exploring and soon found herself above a courtyard where a sparring match was underway. She watched with fascination as a nervous young girl with violet hair faced off against another Hyuga child. Around the square, elder clan members observed quietly. At one point, an adult beside the boy winced in pain after a subtle hand sign from one of the elders, and the boy rushed to help him. Naruko watched, feeling a pang of sadness and longing. Before she could react further, she was lifted by her collar. A Hyuga guard, his expression stern and his eyes activated, stared her down. "Well, what do we have here? A little explorer wandering where she doesn't belong?" he said coldly. "You are not permitted on these grounds. Please leave, and do not return without proper invitation." Despite the harsh tone, his strikes were meant only to disable, and Naruko soon lost consciousness. The guard carried her to the outer edge of the estate and gently lowered her into a dumpster, hoping it would go unnoticed. Just then, Hyashi Hyuga appeared. The guard froze, quickly bowing. "Hyashi-sama." Hyashi looked over the edge of the rooftop with his Byakugan, observing Naruko quietly. "She's unharmed. That is fortunate," he said. "You will remain here and make sure she comes to no further harm. When she wakes up, ensure she leaves the area safely, discreetly, without being seen assisting her." He turned to leave, but added sternly, "In the future, no force, however minor, should be used against children from outside our clan, especially when they are simply exploring. The Hokage's word stands above all. That is all." The guard bowed again, quietly relieved. About 10 minutes later, he sensed movement. Naruko was waking up. He slipped out of view and watched through a nearby wall. She emerged from the dumpster slowly, wiped her face, and quietly ran off across the rooftops in the opposite direction. The guard blinked in surprise. Did she just wipe away tears? He stood silently, puzzled and reflective, as Naruko disappeared into the village, her determination unshaken. Naruko paused on the rooftop, gazing out over a peaceful little park below. A quiet sigh escaped her as she wiped her eyes, the sadness in her chest slowly settling. Once her emotions had calmed, she rose to her feet and wandered aimlessly, gently nudging a small pebble along the path with her foot. "It's just not fair," she thought to herself, feeling overlooked and misunderstood. "No one even wants to give me a chance." The cheerful laughter of children caught her attention, and she peeked through the bushes nearby. A group of kids around her age were playing a game of pretend ninja, their voices full of energy and excitement. Hope flickered in her chest, and she began to step out of the bushes to join them. But then, her eyes landed on a few adults standing nearby, chuckling and watching the children. Naruko hesitated. She knew from experience that joining in might cause more confusion than joy. With a soft sigh, she turned away, leapt over a fence, climbed a nearby wall, and took off down another path, before her courage could change her mind. Before long, she arrived in a different part of the village, one she hadn't explored before. The atmosphere here was distinct. Most of the people had dark hair and carried themselves with noticeable formality. Like the group she quietly referred to as the White Eyes, these villagers also walked with straight-backed posture and calm expressions. Many wore clothing adorned with a bold red and white fan-like symbol. Unlike the refined courtesy of the white-eyed villagers, these individuals gave off a different sort of impression, an air of confidence that bordered on superiority. Though they didn't say anything unkind, their presence made Naruko feel unwelcome. Not wanting to risk being misunderstood or embarrassed, she kept moving forward, determined to explore the village in peace. Dear YouTube family. That's a wrap for now, but every ending sparks the beginning of something greater. If this resonated with you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Your support fuels the journey and keeps the story alive. Until next time. With appreciation and passion. 6 Path Weeb.